And welcome to the No Solely Required podcast, a podcast where we talk about nothing. And today's riveting conversation is going to get your heart pumping. It's going to be very interesting. So let's start off with your trio of host, starting with Audrey, Psycho Killer Ember, and Renegade Romina, and your third and final host, the Dark Lord of the Interwebs, who may or may not be a sociopath, Roberto Blake. Welcome to the No Assembly Required podcast. Filmed in front of a live YouTube audience. Please like and subscribe.
I would like to point out that are we revealing our test results?
Are we doing it right off the bat? Well, first of all, wait a second. We gotta give people a reason to wait. Hold on. Can you tell us this microphone? This is a new microphone that you're on, Audrey, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, because you're loud and crispy. I feel like it's like ASMR.
Is that good or bad?
I'd say it's good.
Decide.
Can you talk a little bit more? Like, give us
hello.
You don't have to get. You definitely do not need to get closer to the microphone.
Hello.
All right, let's do a check here, because I think actually you might be louder than Roberto.
Huh.
What?
Well, that's just because I'm not dead up.
Well, that's not a bad thing, Roberto. I'm just saying.
I can put it further away.
Yeah, she might need to put it a little bit further away just to match all of our.
Is this good?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah. It was just a little bit like shocking at first when you said hello, because I'm so used to you just like sitting quietly in the corner.
All right.
Yeah, it's always the quiet ones.
Right? All right. Before we get... Wait, why does this still say Papa Robert? What is that? Oh, you got the shot?
Yeah.
Ow. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
She's been microchipped.
I've been double microchipped now.
Oh, boy. So before we get started, I do want to give a little bit of a disclaimer just to say we understand that what we're going to talk about today is something that some people actually struggle with, and it is legitimately something that is diagnosed by psychologists, and it's definitely not something to take in jest, but you can't just take a test for this online. But I did find a quiz to see how much of our personalities aligns with sociopathic behavior.
Okay.
And so this isn't like a legitimate test, right? Because you have to actually go with a professional, right? A professional in order to get a proper diagnosis for all of this. And there's different levels to it, right? Like how much of a sociopath you are. So this is just a simple quiz. I think, like, how long did it take you guys to take this quiz?
Like less than 5 minutes.
2 minutes.
Yeah, it was super
I
quick.
lied on all the questions.
Kidding. Wow. Okay, a great start. Unbelievable.
That was a joke. That was a joke.
All right, Audrey, you're gonna. This girl, she buys a mic. And suddenly she thinks she's hot potatoes.
What?
See, the fact that you said that you had to disclose that you made a joke makes me wonder how high you scored on this quiz.
Very low.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I screenshotted my
I did too.
You did too? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to show yours?
Can I send it to you?
I think, well, you can just request, like, you can just share at the bottom of the screen if you want.
Oh.
Unless you want me to do it. But, Roberto, did you screenshot yours as well or no?
I'm just going to send it to you.
I think I screenshotted it with my phone.
Roberto ain't about that screenshot life.
I think I screenshotted it with my phone.
All right, guys.
I sent
I'm gonna first
wrong chat.
Before that was
it's not a good thing to send
right.
the wrong chat.
Hang on.
Audrey. You could have just texted it and you sent it to me. Okay, all right. Okay.
So like I have a fancy
Oh, look
switcher.
at that. Cool.
Wait, how did you do that?
I have an Atom Mini, so I actually have a whole setup where if I just put my phone onto its charging base, it runs an HDMI to Lightning cable to input number 4, and I just use it like my camera switcher. I just go, and I can.
All right, bring it back up though.
That's
Tell
cool.
us what's up.
So I have a very low indication of antisocial personality disorder, according to this. I don't agree.
All right. Okay. Do you want to expand on that?
I think that.
Do you think it's higher?
I think that the context of different situations, like, kind of can determine this, because this test assumes everything is neutral or everything is like equal. It's not circumstantial at all, and I believe what the Joker said. People are only as good as their circumstances allow. The chips are down. These people, they'll all eat each other. So yeah, I agree with that. I believe that you put me into a circumstance that requires an extreme response, that I will ruthlessly and very quickly do things that you don't agree with, like morally, for completely utilitarian, pragmatic reasons. Like, I'm not going to be thrilled about it, but I'm going to do it in a very dispassionate, like, emotionless way. Like, I'm going to do what a fucking machine or Terminator would do. The right thing. Not morally, the right thing, by the numbers.
I've just seen the reaction of Jay in the group chat. When I texted the photo of the thing, he goes, "Is this a good thing?"
Wow.
Whoops.
Did you listen to anything Roberto said?
Yes,
Audrey?
I did.
All right. So what are your 2 cents on that?
I agree, but I also think, hopefully, in general, the principles would carry over. No.
Here's the thing. I don't know. I have my own principles, but my principles aren't necessarily aligned with everybody in society's principles. And I have a utilitarian view of things, meaning that I don't have, like, people's morality would change if they were vegan versus non-vegan. If you're vegan, you might have a set of morals that would differ from the majority of people in Western society. If your lens of morality is Catholic, it's not the same. It might be very close to your lens of morality if you're Protestant. It's certainly different than your lens of morality if you're a Muslim or if you're Jewish. And then even with that, it depends on whether you're Reformed, moderate, or conservative in either of those beliefs, in those sects of religion. So guess what? That means something very simple. Morality is not universal. Morality changes with the lens of culture, changes with the lens of religion, can change through the lens of ethnicity, nationality,
right,
generation that you're born in, and then also your own lived experiences and beliefs as an individual are then up for grabs too. So the thing is, I, taking all of that into consideration, am a much more of a pragmatist than a moralist. I'm a pragmatist versus a moralist. And what I might believe to be the greater overall good at a macro level might come at the expense of what someone believes is right or fair or justice at a micro level. And then but also, I have to be a pragmatist, because if I go to a moralist standpoint, people might find my moralist view of things, if I decide to indulge my moralist view of things, they might find it to be extreme. They might find it to be like, I wouldn't say that they'd find it to be like ultra conservative. I think they'd find it to be like maybe even like archaic. Like oh wow, like maybe you should have been born like 1,000 years ago. You're like, like,
1,000?
Like, yeah, something like that. Like, like I have a very, like, in terms of like a standard. I like actually believe like people believe in this morality thing versus like I believe in like concepts like honor, for example, and I believe in loyalty and fealty. You know, I
Yeah.
believe in like having some kind of like if you have an allegiance to somebody, if somebody has like gone to bat for you, like to some extent, even at your own expense, you're somewhat obliged to them. But that's again a very old, archaic type of concept that lends itself to older versions of society.
I think Otto brings up a good point in the chat, saying, I misunderstand the definitions of both narcissism and sociopathy, to be honest. And so I think maybe it might be good to kind of clear a little bit of that up, like where we're coming from.
Wikipedia.
Because I don't think that it's possible. Like, I think that it's possible to be a sociopath and not be a narcissist.
It's also possible to be on the sociopathic spectrum and not be dangerous.
Right. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
There are people who aren't sociopaths that are moralist that are horrible because they can become a fanatic extremist of a belief system. They can become ideological. Someone can be ideological and not be a sociopath and be much more dangerous than someone that's just a sociopath and is a very successful CEO or athlete, you know, or talented musician that is single-minded. You know, there are people who might be narcissistic that might be Hollywood elites or something like that are far less dangerous than people who aren't narcissistic and belong and because they're not narcissistic, they have no self-esteem and no pride. They belong to a cult or they might be a jihadist or something. And like they might be somebody who's willing to die for a cause. Someone who's willing to die for a cause as an extreme fanatic is a much more dangerous person to society than someone who's just egotistical and narcissistic.
Is there a limit to that cause, though? Like, for example, you're willing to die for your family.
You know, people say that, but it's like, people say that. But the thing is, it doesn't really usually play out that way.
Right.
So, like, people say that, but there's very few examples of that being true. And even if that's the case, here's what a pragmatist would do. A pragmatist would realize, like, you know how, all right, so they always use in ethics arguments, they talk about a lioness who dies defending her cubs, but because she dies defending the cubs are unprotected and they don't have anyone to raise them, and they ultimately die of starvation slowly anyway, whereas if the lioness had preserved her own life, maybe not all of the cubs would have survived, but enough of them would have to continue her bloodline, and she might have been able to breed again and bring new lions into the world. But she and her entire bloodline die because she fought bravely and nobly. Like, that's a stupid romantic notion. So a pragmatist would believe that it's better that, you know, the doing the greater long-term good is that the lioness would have protected her legacy and her bloodline by not sacrificing herself for her children. But moralists are romantic and will say that it's the right thing to do to lay down your life in that situation. Although ultimately, it doesn't ultimately protect anyone because the cubs still die.
So would you say that it's the same, though? Like, if someone does actually go to that point, is it the same as dying for a cause? In what you were describing a couple minutes ago.
What it is it's the thing that's the same about it is self-sacrifice.
Right.
We attach an idea to it of whether it was appropriate, like through our own point of view in a lens. So again, if someone would take the romantic notion of, oh, wow, that's really brave, or like whatever, a pragmatist would look at the long view of it and say, well, how did that work out for everybody? It looked good and noble and pure. Like, a lot of people do a lot of things and they say, and people say, oh, you're a good person, but they actually don't achieve a greater good. It's just that people like them because they do that. It's not the smart or the right thing to do for the majority of the long term. It just looks good on the surface. It's a surface level of good. And this is what pandering to people looks like. This is what coddling people looks like. When you sit there and you indulge people and you tell them what they want to hear and you don't hurt their feelings, you're giving them comfort and you're giving them a false sense of confidence, because then when they go out in the world and they have unreasonable expectations or they have an inflated sense of self-worth or view because you didn't want to lower their self-esteem or hurt them in the moment,
Right.
long term you've set them up for failure, because now they don't know how to operate in a situation where people aren't that kind to them. There's an old Bible phrase akin to part of that: spare the rod, spoil the child. By sparing people hardship, you're ultimately making them, by sparing people hardship because you don't have the courage or the guts to enforce discipline or boundaries or consequences, you ultimately are creating a weaker, privileged, entitled person who doesn't know how to take a punch. You haven't done the world any favors by doing that.
Wait, Romina, I don't think you told us the results of your test.
No, I haven't. What do you guys think I got?
Hi.
Probably yellow.
Excuse me? What do you mean high?
Dark orange.
I see.
I think Romina is yellow to orange because I think Romina is very honest. No, I think that if you're honest, if you're an honest person, if you subscribe to radical honesty, in my opinion, you should be higher up on the sociopathic scale because you're not sitting there coddling people. So actually, I think Romina is going to be higher up because I think Romina is more honest than most people.
All right, guys, I'm going to reveal to you. All right, the test that we took is just a quiz that I found. It was a very quick quiz. Took maybe a couple minutes. And it's just to see how much on the spectrum you are of antisocial personality disorder, which is also akin to sociopathy. So I'm just going to show what I got and reveal it. Dun, dun, dun.
You ended up the same as me.
Fake. Yeah, this is actually Audrey's result.
Excuse me.
Okay, so
I
me and
didn't get the
Romina
little
basically are the
graph.
same.
Yeah, we got the same ones. And I really thought that I was going to score higher.
Same.
And it might be because I feel like the depth of the responses wasn't as in depth as it should have been. I mean, obviously this is just a quiz that I found online.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that something that I do get from people quite often is, well, one thing that I get is that I'm intimidating. And another is that I'm not really soft-spoken and I'm kind of aggressive. I get these from people who don't really know me very well, but have talked to me or asked for my advice on something difficult. And so I feel like there is something there when it comes to being blunt and honest. But, and I also have kind of like a pragmatic view about things. Like I guess in my mind, I'm empathetic in the sense that I can understand where people are coming from and I feel where people are coming from.
But do you make that a priority? Because I understand it and I can sympathize with it and I have empathy, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to change for
and it doesn't change my approach.
Reason to that's not a good enough. The fact that this thing that we have to do to accomplish a goal, or this thing that absolutely makes sense to do, or is the best long-term interest of not just me, but even beyond me, or even if it was depending on your self-esteem level, then okay, yes. If the only collateral damage here is you're going to feel bad and there's no actual material harm being done, but there's material good being done, F your feelings.
Right. I'm gonna link.
And again, that sounds cold. I know that makes me sound horrible, but that's why I'm like, yeah, I probably should be higher on that sociopath level.
I'm linking the quiz that we did in the chat. If you're listening in, this is why it's a good thing to tune in live every Thursday, 7 p.m.ish Eastern Standard Time at youtube.com/noassemblypod, because you get to hang out with us live. So this is the quiz that we took in case anybody in the chat wants to take it while you're listening to us. It's only going to take maybe a couple minutes, if that. But that's why I feel like the quiz just kind of didn't touch on that, because even though I am able to understand somebody's feelings, it doesn't change my approach when it's necessary for them to hear something that they don't want to hear. And in that regard, I'm not sure if that maybe it's just that that isn't one of the things that fall into sociopathic behavior.
But the thing is, people colloquially would believe, even us, colloquially, we would assume that we would assume that it would.
Right.
So the thing is, it means that people could have a gross misunderstanding or misrepresentation of sociopathy.
Right. And I think that they do. Because there is also a negative connotation to it. Like when people hear about it, they immediately just think that it's, someone's going out and doing something really bad, when really it's just the way that they approach social behavior. Mm-hmm. What about you, Audrey? You gonna tell us your results?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm starting to get really tired. I don't know if it's
interesting, considering we actually went earlier today. But you've probably been working since morning, right?
Well, no, I'm wondering if it's just me or if I'm. What's that word?
Wait, when did you
don't know if it's this morning, pretty early.
You got the shot this morning. Shot. Oh, that's what it is.
I'm wondering if it's placebo or if I'm actually getting tired because of the thing.
It might probably be because of the thing.
It's probably legit the thing.
I keep zoning out. Normally, I don't zone out.
It really is probably because of it. Because I'm pretty much like I convince myself whatever is the opposite of what people tell me. So if somebody tells me you're going to be feeling this way, I convince myself that I'm going to be feeling the opposite way. So if I really do feel that way, then it's legitimate. It's not the placebo. Like whenever I start feeling sick, I always just tell myself and I tell other people, oh, I feel great. Like I don't feel bad. That's just something that I trained myself to do a few years ago. And so now I just do it. Like if I catch a cold, it's like, oh, I feel great. I'm fine.
It just magically goes away.
Is that, what kind of behavior is that? That's weird.
I don't know.
I don't think that's bad. All right. For those of you who are wondering, Audrey scored extremely high on this test.
Whoa. No. I don't have the picture of the meter thing, so I can't check. But I just know I'm
sure
early
you got
yellow.
I'm sure you got the same one that Roberto and I got. That seems to be the one that they just give everybody.
Okay.
I wonder if it's even possible to get anything higher.
I was on stream earlier and I was talking about this, and someone said, couldn't a sociopath or psychopath just like lie on a test like this? Like, it's pretty obvious.
Thing is, there are things a lot of times built into these tests. I mean, I don't know how accurate they are, but in theory, there's a lot of these things built in.
Well, if you got a professional test done, if you got a test done with a professional, then it's going to have those kind of trick questions in there to prevent that kind of behavior to manipulate the results. But I mean, obviously this is just like some quiz that it was like the first or second search result when I looked it up.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's oh, look at that. Exploring with Nomad took the quiz. Said they have a low indication.
Nice. Is this the new flex?
Also, Audrey murdered her replica. So
my god.
They're never letting that go, Audrey. This is who you are now.
Well, technically, Romina, you murdered yours too, right?
I didn't know.
Oh.
No, I didn't. My replica is still alive and kicking, living somewhere on the internet.
Yeah, but do you like talk to him or her?
No, I do not talk to her.
That's pretty cruel.
No, it isn't. She's in isolation.
All right.
Oh, it's thundering and
I can't hear it. Oh wait, never mind.
there was lightning in my room like half a second ago. So if my power goes out, you guys. I am not an accomplice. Thank you very much.
The test is rigged.
Yeah,
I mean, I did a quick search too to look for tests, and they're all pretty like not very serious.
Yeah, they're not very good.
I feel like there's just a stigma around psychopaths and sociopaths that like all the tests are kind of like, do you enjoy murdering people? No. Like, just like,
yeah, that's not going to be accurate.
No. Not that psychopaths do that, but those are the types of like stereotypical questions. Don't want to offend anyone in the comments.
We already put the disclaimer at the beginning.
That's true. Now we can say whatever we want. They can't get mad at us.
No, they can't. I put a disclaimer. I said that this wasn't a joke. I mean, we're not trying to make fun of anybody, you know? Roberto, what do you think about that? I see you distracted over there.
Sorry, I have this bad habit sometimes where I end up arguing with people on the internet because I think they're stupid, which is...
All right, but you're talking with us now. You're hanging out with us now. You're taking a break.
Argue with chat instead.
I know.
Yeah, argue with the chat instead. Look.
There's times where I can't help myself.
Here, Roberto. Read this one for the listeners and make a comment about it.
Tristan asks, or rather Tristan comments, I wonder how much of self-awareness of sociopathy within sociopaths leads to self-correction, conformity, and then what we do with that output gap. I don't know, and it's hard to comment on it as an armchair psychologist. And I don't know how to be responsible about it, because the thing is, if I'm talking about myself, I can make jokes and I can goof on myself. If I'm talking about other people, it becomes very different. And that's a problem with it. It's also the problem with like when back in the day when Shane Dawson did his whole docu-series thing that for the YouTube community mainstreamed the idea of the word sociopath. When he was talking about Jake Paul and speculating that Jake Paul might be a sociopath, like that probably was not the correct thing to do. And then with Logan coming forth though and talking about his own experience being on the sociopathic spectrum, and that there's things with empathy that he struggles with, self-awareness of it, for me at least, when I look at Logan Paul actually, once he changed the people that were around him, was able to use self-awareness to correct and to achieve his goals and to have a better career and lifestyle. And I think that worked out. Jake is not and would not be a sociopath. He has other life issues that I can't really speak to or comment on. But beyond that, having not like really known him and like only met him for 5 seconds, but which you can't diagnose people off of the internet. You like, that's stupid. Like that. So what I would say is, and it's funny, people have this really interesting habit of wanting to throw the word narcissist or sociopath around at people that they watch on the internet all damn day, and forget how much of the internet is performative.
The amount of people who called me some kind of narcissist or egomaniac or something of something in that spectrum is unbelievable. And it's crazy too, because it's not like I was doing anything that exciting. I mean, as far as like, I wasn't really, I don't feel like it was any kind of narcissistic behavior. I mean, really, my channel is all about travel, and it's about exploring places in the world. So it's just like where do you get off calling me that?
Yeah.
And it really all just comes down to because I showed my face, one, and because two, I'm female. That's really all it comes down to. And I know this because I actually engage in conversation with these people sometimes in the comments. It's to my own demise because
conversation or a trial by combat.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, it's essentially me just trying to figure out how to make them realize that they are the loser in this scenario. But it really comes down to me just being female and showing my face, and that alone makes me a narcissist. The fact that I'm vlogging, because I'm making it all about me by doing that. Well, I guess I don't know. I guess people just want me to show the place, and I'm just like, if you want to see a montage of like pretty places, this channel ain't it. Like, this isn't what this is about. I mean, this is about like my experience and the experience of my friends and family and the experience of other people around the world and how that relates to different destinations.
Yeah.
Period.
Boom. And you don't like it, you can leave.
Yeah, you can leave. There's like a bunch of other channels that you can watch. You want to go watch some like GoPro footage or something.
Yeah.
KDX, you know the best way to. Oh,
all right.
Sorry.
What's
KDX
happening?
has a comment that I want to address.
This one?
Yeah.
All right. Audrey, do you want to read it?
Logan Paul died.
Wow, really, Audrey? Really, Audrey? Audrey should have scored higher.
She's in the red, man. She broke the thermometer.
I misread
We
that.
need to get a damn professional. You need a professional. Audrey should have scored higher. Wow. Tell us how you really feel, Audrey.
Is it the shot or is it your jeans? I don't know.
It's in the past. Logan Paul laughed at a dead body tied to a tree. That's gotta mean.
Okay.
This comes from our chat. This comes from KDX in the chat.
Oh my god.
Okay. So KDX in the chat. It means nothing. It means nothing. And that's the problem with most normal people, is they want to make an assumption or assertion that means something. But the thing is, there's not the idea that we have some appropriate, like what we feel is an appropriate response to somebody processing something traumatic is completely asinine. And I'm not calling you completely asinine. I'm saying we as a society.
Let's not start something with our.
No, I'm just saying, because again, it's not KDX's fault that this is the norm, but this is why in my quizzes, I take dumps, steaming dumps all over social norms, because I'm like, no. But also, I'm ADHD, so I'm MND, so of course I don't like social and cultural norms. Of course I don't. So I'm a living middle finger to cultural norms in a lot of cases.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, for real. Think about all the
you break a lot of things. That sounded weird. You break a lot of things. Well, I mean, sometimes, yeah. I'm sure you wish you could break a lot of things.
Break a lot of molds that people.
Yeah, you break a lot of stereotypes.
Yes,
that a lot of people would, a lot of assumptions that people would make about you, specifically because, one, because of the color of your skin. 2, because of your education. 3, because of the industry that you're in, and so on and so forth.
Culture, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just one big middle finger, to be honest.
Yeah, I am just one big middle finger F you to all assumptions and stereotypes, typecasting. And so that's why. But the thing is, my issue, and my issue isn't KDX. It's this, and it's not even his comment. It's the idea.
Oh no, we love
that
KDX.
Everybody decided that because Logan Paul laughed at a dead body hanging from a tree, that means something, and that he is that he's damaged in some way. And the thing is, even if that were true, that would still say it's not his fault. That would still mean it's not his fault. And that's because that's not a character thing. If something is your psychology, and then it's not your character. If something's your brain chemistry, it's not your character. Like that's called, like if that's why with like ADHD and people who are autistic or people who have Asperger's or people who have any number of neurotypical situations.
Yeah.
Like people assign character assertions and traits to them based on things that are not about a choice that they're consciously making or anything to do with who they are as a person. It's the way their brain functions, and it pisses me off.
Right.
And so
yeah, me too. And the thing is that like I feel like I can make jokes about ADD, and I do all that. I do that all the time.
We're making jokes on ourselves.
Right. And I'm definitely like, if you're gonna make jokes, and make jokes, like the whole double standards thing, I just don't believe in all that. I'm just like, yeah, if I can make jokes, so can you. But I feel like there is that kind of misconception just because ADD has become this taboo subject of people being medicated for being human, right?
Yes.
And I look at that and I think about my colleagues, the other students in my class, and how they just didn't struggle, and how it was so much easier for them to achieve this level of success and to get good grades and to focus and do things that was so much more challenging for me when I was off medication. So what does that say? Because that isn't proof in how I was raised. That isn't proof in my personality. That isn't a proof of how my parents were, like my discipline. None of that played into it because my parents disciplined me well. I had structure. I had a good family. I had a good home. I had consistency in my environment. So it wasn't like I was moving, like there was no excuse, right, for that kind of behavior. And it very, very much was for me, and still continues to be, a chemical imbalance. And I'm an organized person. I'm very productive and efficient. I like to be efficient. But when it comes down to it, the bottom line is that I do have a chemical imbalance in my brain. And even though I choose to be off medication now, I've managed to be able to cope with it. It still is something that I struggle with on a daily and a weekly basis. It's not something that is ever going to go away.
It an imbalance. I don't even agree with people calling it imbalance. It's how you are. Just because it's divergent from or it's abnormal to the majority of the population, so what? That doesn't make
I mean, like on a scientific level.
I know that they say that scientifically, but again, they're gauging that off of what presents as an average. What presents as average.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, so what? Like if someone presents as a deviation from what's average, that doesn't see, that's my problem. And that's why I make the joke about, oh, well, I'm a freak. Or it's like, hey, are you guys like, you're a freak of nature like me? It's like, I make that joke because there's just because all of you have gone along with the way something is, or all of you present in this way, doesn't mean that anyone that presents outside of that should be treated as I don't think that those people should be othered in a way of being treated as lesser. And that's what frustrates me. And with the Logan thing, my problem is that because people claim, even though they would never know, because the majority of people have not encountered a dead body in a forest in Japan hanging from a tree, since almost nobody has actually experienced that, making an assertion about what the appropriate response to that is, and assuming there even is an appropriate response to that, besides calling the authorities, which was done, is like asinine to me, because in that moment, there's any number of variables to how somebody might process that based on things that are nothing to do with their character.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the way someone reacts to how they see a dead body means anything about them, because that's not most people's normal experience. And the thing is, it's not anybody's place to judge how someone reacts to something traumatic, in my opinion. In my opinion, if you're judging how somebody reacts to trauma, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like, you do realize that there's nothing as far as a character, there's not a character flaw in somebody if they have like a physical reaction or they're stimulated while they're being assaulted. If someone were to become aroused while they're being assaulted, you know what? That's not a character flaw. That's not their fault. That's not them enjoying it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like, I know that's graphic, but I'm making a point. It's like, you can't make the argument that something's wrong with someone because they respond in a way that you think they shouldn't have, because I could find any number of scenarios where there's a way that someone reacts either because of physiology or psychology that seems completely disconnected from what might be happening in that moment and seems, oh, that doesn't seem like that's appropriate. And if you tried to extrapolate something from that to mean something else, you're just pulling at straws and it doesn't mean anything. And to make it a character assertion about somebody or to use it in a way that to define their character, I think is ridiculous. And the thing is, it's possible that I might have even done that in the moment during the Logan Paul thing, during the backlash against him. And if I did, then in that moment, I wasn't thinking it through, because if I had, I would have like came to the conclusion that I'm having now. Because the thing that I will say is, if you are like primary example, if you're a kid and you still keep liking somebody after they hurt you or something like that, that's not something about your character, and it doesn't mean you did something wrong, you deserved it. And most people would agree and say that's perfectly reasonable. If you like, there's not a character, there might be something that's not supposed to be happening, but if somebody stays with their abuser, that's not a character thing to attack them with. You know, if they're doing something that, okay, in theory, most people would leave, quote unquote, leave or exit that situation. And I've had friends to go through this, and I've made it a point to not judge them or think that they're stupid or think that there's something wrong with their character if they kept staying in an abusive relationship, whether they were male or female. I've had friends that have stayed in abusive relationships. It doesn't mean something was like wrong with their character just because there was something wrong happening there.
Right.
And I'm going to give Logan the benefit of the doubt. It's not the same thing as giving him a pass. It's like saying, you know, there are plenty of people like I know for a fact that in situations where I literally am having a breakdown out of sheer pain or where I've been abused, I know that I was literally laughing in response to being abused. Like while crying and having a breakdown, I was having a hysterical like laughing thing. I know I've done that before. I know that in reaction to an extreme rage that I've gone into laughing hysterical and having a hysterical laughing fit in the middle of an extreme rage before. Like, that doesn't mean anything about somebody's character or whether they're a good person or anything. And that's what my problem with moralism is. My problem with looking at things through a spectrum of your own morality is that it has nothing to do with somebody's reality, because your morality has nothing to do with material science, and it has nothing to do with neuroscience and chemistry, and it has nothing to do with what we might call an imbalance in somebody's brain, or how they process trauma and their lived experiences, or what might be culturally moral in the world that they grew up in, or the generation they grew up in, or what their religion is.
I mean, I kind of like was thinking about what KDX just commented, that the reaction Logan had wasn't really what bothered me. It was the fact that he still posted it online.
Even though he had no time to think about it.
Yeah, there was time in between. He could have been like, oh, maybe I shouldn't post this. Like, I feel like
I talked about that in my video about his interview with Casey.
Yeah.
I understand that, and that was my problem too. But I think that has to more do with stopgap protocols, because the thing is, remember the narrative he tried to create around that whole thing. Because again, people thought his entire Japan experience was problematic. and what have you. But the thing is, just remember that, like, I think in the year before that same year, but earlier, like 6 months or something, or 7 months before that, there was like some young man who tried to do a Desert Eagle prank with his girlfriend, where he had the girlfriend shoot at him with the Desert Eagle, and he tried to stop it with a book, and he passed away as a result of that.
Yeah.
Okay. There's not a moral issue here with that. It's a matter of the way that a young person doesn't appreciate consequences, and the way that a culture that we have today, it's not a moral issue, even if you want to think it's one. The culture we have today of youth is that they can rationalize a lot to get attention. And that's not new. The tools are. That's not necessarily new. The tools are. You had class clowns 30 years ago too that would do pranks and stuff like that. It was just different, and they couldn't scale it to the internet, but they'd scale it to the classroom, the Ferris Bueller level stuff. So again, if I look at it again, I'm not giving him a pass for saying it's the right thing to do. I'm saying that Logan's ability and where he is on the sociopathic spectrum would say he can rationalize this, because the thing is, most people think that they're morally good because they wouldn't do that. They're not morally good because they wouldn't do that. Their fear of consequences is what makes them think that. And the thing is, if people outside of Logan's community didn't actually respond to that, there wouldn't have been any consequences, because his own audience, in the majority, thumbs up and liked it and everything. And yes, it did traumatize some younger people and viewers in his audience, but his own community doubled down. He got more subscribers on the back of that. More people bought his merchandise. More people flocked to him than abandoned him. And from a, like, again, it was just a different group of people that disagreed with him, but not his own tribe. Meaning that outside, if his actions existed in the bubble of his own audience, he would have had no consequences whatsoever. And the thing is, when you look at that on a basic level, then what would have prompted him not to do that, knowing that it will be well received? So the thing is, even if we find something distasteful, it doesn't matter if there's just what you find distasteful, or even if you could find enough people to agree with you on what's distasteful. I'll go super controversial.
Oh boy.
30 years ago, society was very different and was much more conservative. And even though they, in some cases, didn't say it was illegal, the majority of society either was neutral or held the view that being LGBT wasn't okay. And they didn't treat people very kindly over it. And they shamed people over it. 30 years ago, that was true. Even up to 20 or 15 years ago, I would argue, even 10, that was probably still true for a majority of places in America that weren't like hyper liberal meccas like New York or California. Throughout most of Midwestern America, the South, rural America, that's how it was. In many cases, that might still be something that people are going through. So just because a majority holds a view on something doesn't necessarily mean it's right, just because they all agree that it fits their lens of morality. Just because their collective view of morality approves of something or disapproves of something isn't enough to actually mean anything if you look at whether material harm results from it. And that's true in the sense of this. I'm not really trying to compare these two things aside from the concept of moral arguments.
Right.
What makes the correct moral argument? Is it that most of Logan's people were fine with what he did? Or is it the outsiders? Is it based on which one of those groups is larger that determines whether it was right or wrong? Or is it that the material impact of it is what determines it? If it's me, I will look at the material impact that it has, like in the real world. And the thing is, in my case, I believe that the material impact is that it made the other influencers, his contemporaries, his colleagues, look bad. It made people who associated with him. It damaged his own career in terms of his financial career and health. It damaged his reputation. It damaged the reputation of people associated with him. And there were people, young people, who were traumatized by being exposed to that. Even if there was a trigger warning, there were people who have nightmares about it. So there was material harm done. I believe material harm was done. Now, again, that action in my mind lives on its own. He is not the worst thing that he did.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? Because It's not like it was irreputable harm.
Mm.
Even if there were a large number of people traumatized, and there was a reputation loss, and there was like things. And the thing is, most of us can say that video should not have been posted. And I would agree with you.
Right.
But we could make that argument for lesser things too. And again, people have made the argument and have made arguments to suit their own morality of what should or should not be allowed. And the thing is, over a period of time, we change our minds about what should or should not be allowed. A lot of people, we have this really, really moralistic view of like age gaps. Even if stuff is legal, we go, well, that's gross, or just because it's legal doesn't make it right. But just remember, when it comes to being like gay or bi or anything, just 15, 20 years ago, people would say, well, just because it's legal doesn't make it right on that too. And again, this is not to compare. And again, I'm not in that situation. I have friends and family who are in that situation, and I'm not speaking for them. But if anything, I'm advocating for them, saying, I am very cautious about this moralism and this like highbrow talking down to people thing and telling people what the right thing is or what's gross or whatever, because I remember what people went through just a few years ago was the same thing. And even if it's not exactly the same, it's coming from that place of thought of gatekeeping what is and isn't okay. And we've already kind of made a boundary on that. It's called, is it legal?
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't be having a conversation past if something's legal unless it actually affects you.
I want to bring up in the chat, because I was convinced that maybe the quiz was just going to give everybody low results. But somebody in their chat, MG, she got no indication of sociopathic behavior.
That's different. That's weird.
Right? But see, I was a little skeptical about the quiz that I found. Because everybody in the chat was like, "Oh, I got low." Everybody was like, got the same thing as we did. So you thought the
quiz was like weak?
I thought maybe it was like rigged or something. I don't know.
I took a different quiz the entire time that we were here. I took another quiz.
Yeah.
I also got low on that one too, so it was consistent. Even though it was a like massively different quiz, it had like this one had like 40 questions, and I still got.
Oh man. Yeah, it's a little. That's impressive, MG. Good for you. I
wonder if that means MG is an empath. I wonder if that means that MG is an empath.
Is that what the opposite of sociopath?
No, people would think that, but I think it's just that the traits would present.
Yeah.
It would present it because think about it. I think it'd be that you'd have to be an empath and you'd have to be lawful good. I think the only reason I scored low is because I'm lawful good. And even if I'm not lawful good, I'd be lawful evil. Meaning that even if I'm doing something that you don't agree with, I'm going to do it to the extent that I can still be in compliance with the rules, because I'm going to have the respect for the consequences.
This is kind of an interesting thing that Tristan brought up in the chat, which is trauma can have long haul effects as well. If someone shuts down for a few months, it's seen as understandable. Whereas if people are active in that same time period, their response is criticized.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that too.
All three of us can relate to that. I wanted to, all right, so during my grandmother's passing and the funeral and the wake and everything,
yeah,
I took all the family photos because I hid behind my camera.
Right.
I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to interact with people. I just didn't want to deal with people throughout the entire process. I didn't want to be touched. I didn't want to be held. I didn't want to be hugged. I didn't want to be comforted. And there was a lot of things that happened with my grandmother with her cancer and with the way the hospital handled things. I was angry and I was sad, and I didn't want to deal with people. And there were things that were handled by family members and even by the funeral home to where I was very angry with the funeral home and I was angry with the church. And so I was angry with everybody, basically. So I did not present as mourning and grieving because my mourning and grieving was me being angry the entire time. And then afterward, I wanted immediately to get back to work and not think about it. And that was me. Now, a lot of people would make that into maybe you didn't care about your grandmother or you weren't deeply impacted by her passing, when it's actually the opposite. It's that my only way to be able to not be completely overwhelmed and destroyed was to not wallow and not stop moving.
Right. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I mean, I've definitely been on both sides of the spectrum. But I think because of my adaptive nature, I don't like to dwell in a state of mind that is going to hinder another aspect of my life. And so because of that, I figure out a way to deal with the trauma that will benefit those other sides of my life. Whether it's work or my personal life, like social life or hobbies and etc. So I think that because of that, it can come off as either cold or
unfeeling, or
yeah.
But it's stoicism. It's that
Or
you
off-putting.
have you through discipline and through persevering through hardship have developed a sense of indifference to obstacles, a sense of indifference to difficulty. You've accepted that hardship is an inevitability and that avoidance doesn't help.
Right. And figuring out how to bounce back from that trauma as quickly as possible to get back to those peaks, to get back to those.
But the wallowing and the stuff and the the being emotional would be relatable to people. Which is why, again, I'm glad that there are misfits that feel that I'm relatable. I feel some comfort in that. I'm glad if anyone else takes comfort in, oh, Roberto's like me. But also if you're saying, oh, I take comfort in the fact that Roberto's like me, I also have to say, I'm so sorry, because I that's if you're anything like me, then oh wow, that's rough. So I'm so sorry. But hopefully we have enough awesome things going on to make up for it. But I say that because it's like, again, if you are not neurotypical, or you also just are not very extroverted, it feels very alienating, and it feels very much like you're judged all the time because you're not going to handle or react to things the way people expect. And it feels like the other alternative would be to be a sociopath, a real sociopath, and to just fake it and go through the motions just to make your life easier. And I think the reason you and I, Romina, actually probably scored so low on the sociopath spectrum is because we don't bother faking things to be accepted and for attention. Maybe that's why we don't get enough views. Maybe we don't get enough views because we actually are honest to goodness, authentic, and we don't fake views. And we don't fake things or do exactly what would be in our best interest. Like we legit just say screw it and we're ourselves. Whereas I think that the reason that a lot of people are successful in our industry is because we could adapt. We could do it. We can give the people what we want. And it's not like we don't know what we want, what they want. It's not like we can't read the data. It's just that we just don't have the capacity to do the dog and pony show. And to be what people want them to be. Like Logan himself said it when people decide to cast him as a villain. He's like, oh, I guess I'll just be the bad boy of YouTube and I'll try that. It works for Jake because Jake is not pandering when he does it. It's authentic, you know, because he felt, oh, it works for Jake. But like what Logan didn't consider is, and he said this, I'm not speaking for him. He actually said this in like an interview. I think he said in the Casey interview, and I think he said in the podcast since, he was like, I'll just be what he said at that moment. He was thinking, I'll just be what people want me to be. I'll be an empty vessel and they can make me what they want and I'll do it for their entertainment because my only goal is to be an entertainer, which means he is willing to be what people want from him more than what he would want for himself because he doesn't have beyond an outcome, a goal that he wants. And this is just like CEOs. They'll build whatever people want, they'll supply and demand that thing, and they will just say, okay, whatever will change the world, whatever will make me famous, whatever will just be disruptive. That look at Elon. Elon will like, I'm gonna build tunnels. I'm gonna build rocket ships. I'm gonna build electric. He will do anything to be disruptive.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, he'll become anything.
Right. He literally builds a tunnel.
Yeah. He'll become anything. He makes a flamethrower just because he can. It's like, I don't think he was super passionate about building flamethrowers.
Right.
I think what he's passionate about is disruption. I think he's passionate about that disruption of how far can I go? And that's because if he can go that far, then people will acknowledge him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Logan, I think a lot of people in our industry are like that.
Right. And I think too, it brings up a point, what you said earlier too, is how many people are okay with it. How many people were okay with watching his video, for example.
Yeah.
And that's really where it counts, right? Because that's why he did it. So.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say some people are a victim of their own success. My neutral stance on him at the time was, I think that as much as people came at him, I would argue that he and Jake are the victims of being successful very young, because when you actually don't know who you are and you don't have an identity, and your identity becomes giving other people what they want, to some extent that is at your expense. It's at the expense of you figuring out who you are. I mean, let's look at a different example. Let's look at Pokimane. Pokimane is 27 now. She says that she's spent the last 10 years of her life. I think maybe she's 24, like something like that. She's been doing this stuff since she was a teenager, since she was in high school or college. She says she has grown into adulthood, but not grown into herself, because she's not had an identity outside of performing for people on the internet. So the thing is, I believe that whether you're Pokimane or Logan Paul or Mr. Beast, that sometimes a lot of you're a victim of your success, even though people would never think to call you a victim because they just want to whine about how better your life is than theirs and call you privileged. But you're a victim of the fact that your identity is held for ransom against the thing that made you successful, and you'll never really know whether or not you can be yourself and have the same results, and if you'll be loved for yourself more than the thing that you do for people. That's actually very sad to think about, that your only value to people is how you make them feel versus who you actually are, and that somebody might mourn your career when you pass away, but who will actually mourn for you, since no one knows who you are, least of all you. When I say that out loud, how sad does that sound?
Yeah. That's pretty sad. I think about child actors and how fortunate they are on the one hand, because they got a head start in their career. Essentially, if they did everything right, by the time they hit 18, they've already done a couple decades of work to get a head start from other adults that are just getting started and aspiring to be actors, right? But then on the other hand, the majority of their existence in childhood has been towards developing what their front-facing persona is, who they are as entertainers, and creating that divide of who they are when they're being interviewed, because it's one thing to be interviewed, and it's another to just be talking with a friend and getting to know somebody.
Yeah.
And I think that on that end, it is really sad, because it's hard to get to know yourself. It's one of the hardest people to get to know, because you have so much influence from your family and your friends and from society. Like, do I actually like this movie? Or is it just because I think that I like it because of marketing? Because I'm being convinced that I should like it because I'm into sci-fi. I'm into romantic comedies.
You realize
so
how much of I had to take from people just because they had expectations of what I should like, because it's like, well, you're black, you should like this. Or you're black, why do you like that? or like, it's like someone brought up poor Michael Jackson. Yeah, like,
yeah, MJ.
Like, in
yeah.
general, people don't believe. Maybe this actually next week's topic is equivalent exchange. So because people don't believe, people refuse to believe. They just look at people as lucky or fortunate when they look at people and they call them out on privilege or whatever. It's like people ask me like, how can I have so much compassion or sympathy for millionaires and billionaires? I'm like, because I don't look at their bank account, I look at their story, and I don't dehumanize people based on what they do or don't have. You guys do that, or you guys would agree with me that it's wrong to dehumanize people based on their bank account, but you guys put an asterisk on it and say, unless they make a lot more than me, and then fuck them. Like, that's my problem with woke people, is the hypocrisy of the fact that you have humanity and compassion for anybody unless they have it better than you, unless while having it better than you, they
unless they fall into a group that you should hate.
Yeah,
because of stereotypes.
They fall into, like, or unless you denounce everything that makes their life better than yours as evil. And that's stupid, because here's the thing. I'll tell you why I feel bad for Jeff Bezos. I'll tell you why I feel bad for Jeff Bezos. He's the richest man in the world, and I feel bad for him. You know why I feel bad? Besides all the bad press he gets?
Yeah, because
Jeff
he's
Bezos,
bald?
No, like, because that's awesome. Because, like, if you're losing your hair, you might as well just go, like, full tilt.
Yeah, but he's been going bald for like 30 years now.
Hack.
He's been bald since he was like a child.
But the minute if you look at Sandy,
you don't feel bad for
Jeff
him
Bezos
losing his hair at a young age.
He looks younger, healthier, and happier.
All right, but I'm not talking about a shaved head. I'm talking about balding. Roberto, you don't feel sorry for him for that?
I'll get to the things I do. Maybe.
All right. Okay.
I'll feel, because he looks amazing.
Continue.
Like
no,
here's where I do feel
like
bad.
Luther.
Here's where I feel bad. First of all, he was put up for adoption.
Right.
So, like, if you, like, now granted, he ended up in a great situation.
Yeah, with a Cuban dad.
So, like, first of all, he's put up for adoption. Then he grows up initially grows up in a single parent home situation.
Right.
So you immediately feel bad for young Jeff, and people go, "Oh, well, what, all right, the child that he was, sure, okay, but like, let's go into adulthood." I'm like, okay. He didn't date until he was like 26 years old, because he didn't date until like he finished his second degree, because he was focused on his good grades, and he was valedictorian in high school, and he was summa cum laude in college and got 2 degrees. He literally delayed gratification in a very significant way by not dating until he's 26 years old. Yes, I feel bad for the guy. I feel sorry for someone who, like, okay, to an extent, you single-mindedly did all those things, but it's like, wow, you really just did not make room for anything else during that. You missed out on a lot of rites of passage and milestones of youth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, and again, I feel bad also, and I can relate to that, because I didn't go that far, but because I had 3 younger siblings, and I had a single mom, and I didn't have a great, wonderful, successful Cuban stepdad.
There's aspects of your childhood and upbringing that you missed out on.
Exactly. There's aspects of adolescence and being carefree and things I missed out on.
Yeah.
I didn't always, or even if I felt I had a choice in that, I felt that choice was leveraged against, like, making things more difficult for my mom or my siblings. So I chose responsibility. Jeff chose responsibility for a different reason. He chose to be responsible for a different reason, but he had the opportunity to truly have it both ways. And as somebody who maybe didn't feel like they had that choice, I feel a little bad that, like, okay, like, what could have been, like, for you in that, because maybe you could have done both and you didn't, like, even give it a shot to have, like, so I feel bad there. He does end up with Mackenzie, who turned out to be great until they got divorced. I feel bad for him because he was with somebody for his entire adult life, and now he's not with that person. Like,
but that was a choice.
That was a choice too, and there were choices that led up to that. I still think
it's still a sad thing.
The absence of somebody that represents that much of your life and actually saw the transformation of you becoming your ultimate self and was there for that, not having that person in your life or not having intimacy with that person or having them in the same way, even if you're making a choice, even if it's for the best, that's still something to be mourned or to be pitied. You know, is the absence of a long-standing relationship with that. Same thing with Bill and Melinda Gates right now. Okay, right. That's a lot. And in Bill and Melinda Gates' case, they have children together. So that's a lot. And as a child of divorce, I'm like, I feel
it's not fun.
It's fun. So like, so
have you speaking of this, I don't want to get too deep into it because we should be wrapping up soon.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is something that we can dive deeper into next week.
Sure.
But before that, have you checked out Infinity Train?
I have heard nothing but good things, and now that the series is being finished, I'm like all about getting on that Infinity Train.
Oh, you should definitely get on the Infinity Train, especially with everything you're talking about right now. Divorce plays a huge role in it.
Yeah.
And it's been really good so far. I think I'm on like episode 7 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just getting started. I just started it a few days ago.
It's on HBO
really
Max,
good.
right?
Yeah, HBO Max. I think you would really like it, Roberto.
Yeah, I have HBO Max, so I have all the streaming services.
Yeah, it's nice. All right, we should probably start wrapping up soon.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the last like bit of this tangent just becomes, if I look at people's story, it doesn't matter how much more they might have in terms of material possessions or wealth than me. I can look at someone's story, see the humanity of them, and see experiences that are more than worth humanizing and looking at and having compassion for and having empathy for. And then also to have so many strangers attack you, and also have so many strangers have an opinion about how your life should be lived, how what you worked for should be utilized, how what you, who have no idea and they don't have to live with it and they didn't build it. I again, remember what I think you saw, I tweeted something earlier. I said, I made this long thread, and then I said, you know, I could have just said, be the change you want to be in the world. But then I like did an ellipses and I said, while also not insisting that other people should be the change you want to be in the world because you can't seem to get your ish together.
Right.
Like, and I feel that the thing is, people are always so generous with Jeff Bezos' situation and his resources, but I'm like, you didn't decide to be valedictorian of your high school. You didn't do whatever it takes and not date and not do this and not do that and do that. You didn't decide to go get 2 high-level degrees and become summa cum laude of your college. You didn't decide to not date until 26. You didn't decide to then only get married at like age 30. You didn't decide after achieving those things, you didn't have the option of going and working in a prestigious career. And even if you had gotten to work in a prestigious career and done all of that, you wouldn't have given it all up at 36 years old to start a bookstore in Seattle. And
why are you yelling?
Because I'm a little frustrated with it. It's like people whine and cry when they would never, ever, once they achieve, they know for a fact, they keep saying things like, oh, if I made this much money, I'd be comfortable. I wouldn't want anything else. It's like, then you would never be one of those people that you envy so much, because you would have stopped at like level 2 instead of level 10. Because again, they would stop at a good job and a good salary. They would never risk a good job and a good salary and give it up to be an entrepreneur. And that's what Jeff did. And his company still almost went under during the .com bubble. He went to being a billionaire, but then still almost lost it all overnight in the bubble. So you get what I'm saying? It's like people will judge you, but they will not
Roberto,
do the
save
things
some
that
for next week.
Yeah.
I know that you're heated right now, but you gotta calm down, man. Relax.
Yeah.
Go watch some Infinity Train.
I'm going to actually listen to some Viper here in a minute.
Oh, yeah. True that. Thank you guys for joining. By the way, Tristan in the chat says, thanks. As someone from the UK, I appreciate the earlier start time.
I think our viewership will improve with this earlier start time, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess people like it earlier. Sorry, Audrey. I know it kind of cuts into the middle of your day. But yeah, I like it too, because then we can kind of talk for a little bit longer. Because sometimes when we go talking a little bit longer, I start to droop when it's later in the
I end up having
evening.
a long night when we do that. So it's
Yeah, because then I get back to work or I'm doing something and I can't do stuff afterwards because we finish later. So it is good. I think all around we like the 7 p.m.-ish. The 7 p.m.-ish start time. Thank you guys for joining us. Roberto, do you have an outro?
I think I can pull one off.
I don't want to be canceled. All right. By the way, you guys should subscribe to us youtube.com/noassemblypod, and hit the notification bell. Smash it. I want that bell to break.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Okay.
Oh, that helps with my outro.
Was that too aggressive?
All right. Thank you for listening to the No Assembly Required podcast, a podcast where we talk about nothing. Tune in next week where we will sit here and we will defend the 0.1% to the death. Trial by combat. But no, seriously, what we will be talking about next week is just the price of success and what it actually looks like and the laws of equivalent exchange. Tune in next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time-ish for your trio of hosts, starting with Romina with the good hair, Audrey Girl Ember, and of course, your Dark Lord of the interwebs, who, as it turns out, is not a sociopath, is merely lawful evil, Roberto Blake. Thank you for listening. We will see you next week.